Hello, my name is James Harrison, 40 years old, an entrepreneur living in the bustling city of New York, where the lights of skyscrapers never fade. I own a financial consulting firm with dozens of employees, contracts worth millions of dollars, and a schedule so packed that every passing minute is measured in money. It sounds glamorous, but if you ask me about the truly meaningful moments in my life, I would hesitate, because I've let them slip away like autumn breezes gliding through streets covered in golden leaves. My penthouse apartment sits on the 35th floor of a luxurious Manhattan building, with large glass windows opening to a dazzling cityscape of lights at night. But I rarely stop to take it in. My life is an endless chain of days, meetings, signing contracts, flying across time zones to meet partners. My phone buzzes constantly, emails flood in relentlessly, and I always feel like I'm racing against time. I used to take pride in that, the feeling of being important, the one holding big opportunities. But now, as I sit here writing this story, I feel only regret. My family, or rather what remains of it, was once the center of a world I carelessly neglected. My wife, Claire, was the gentlest woman I've ever known. She had a smile as warm as autumn sunlight, deep brown eyes that always looked at me with a patience I didn't deserve. Claire once told me on a rare, peaceful evening when we were still dating, "James, I don't need you to give me the world. I just need you to take the time to look at me, really look at me." I laughed, pulled her into my arms, and promised I would. But I broke that promise not just once. My daughter, Emily, only 12 years old, is the sunshine of my life. She's smart, sensitive, and has eyes just like her mother's, deep as if they hold an entire world of emotions I've never truly understood. Emily loves to draw, loves to tell stories, and always carries a small notebook to jot down her random ideas. Once she showed me a drawing of a family of 3 standing under an autumn tree, golden leaves falling around them. I praised it, but quickly turned back to my laptop screen. I didn't realize that the drawing wasn't just a picture. It was her longing, her yearning to be close to her parents. That autumn, when the roads in suburban New York were awash in shades of gold and red, I took Emily to her new school. She was about to start a new grade, a new chapter in her life, and Claire had prepared everything meticulously, from Emily's favorite blue backpack to detailed instructions on making new friends. I, as usual, was busy. A major contract with a Chicago company was in its final stages, and I couldn't take my eyes off my phone. I had promised Claire I'd drive Emily to school, a trip she hoped would be a warm family moment before our daughter entered her new environment. That morning, the sky was clear, the air crisp, and autumn breezes sent golden leaves dancing across the road. Emily sat in the back seat, clutching her new backpack, her eyes sparkling as she looked out the window. Claire sat beside me, gently reminding me to slow down, but I nodded absent-mindedly, my ear glued to a call with a partner. "James, can you put the phone down for a bit?" Claire said, her voice soft but tinged with concern. I smiled, brushing it off with a casual, "Don't worry, I've driven 1,000 times." But I wasn't really looking at her, nor at Emily through the rearview mirror where she was smiling, eagerly talking about her new school. Then everything happened too fast. A truck came barreling from an intersection. I don't remember the exact moment, just the blaring horn, the shattering glass, and Claire's scream. When I opened my eyes, my head spinning, blood trickling from my forehead, I saw Claire motionless beside me. Her face was pale, her eyes closed, no trace of her warm smile. Emily was sobbing in the back seat, clutching her shoulder but still conscious. I called Claire's name, shook her, but she didn't respond. My heart felt like it was being crushed, but I tried to stay calm, holding Emily close as the ambulance arrived. Claire died on the spot, the doctors told me later. The injuries were too severe, beyond saving. Emily, thankfully, only had a few bruises and a small cut on her hand. Or so I thought at the time. I didn't take her for a thorough checkup or ask her much because my mind was consumed by the storm of work and grief. I told myself I needed to be strong, to keep going for Emily's sake. But the truth is I was running from the pain, from responsibility, and from my own daughter. After Claire's funeral, I brought Emily home, trying to piece our lives back together. But I didn't know what to do with a 12-year-old girl grappling with the greatest loss of her life. Emily grew quieter, no longer sharing stories or showing me her sketchbook. I thought she just needed time to heal, that children are always more resilient than adults. But I was wrong. I didn't see the cracks in her soul, didn't notice the sadness in her eyes as she looked at me, waiting for a hug or a word of comfort I never gave. The weeks following the accident passed like a foggy dream, where everything felt both familiar and foreign. My penthouse apartment, once filled with Claire's laughter and Emily's cheerful chatter, was now cloaked in silence. I didn't know how to fill that void, so I chose the easiest path, burying myself in work. I told myself I needed to keep things stable, that I had to be strong for Emily. But deep down, I knew I was running from the pain of losing Claire, from the sadness in my daughter's eyes, and from myself. Each morning I woke before dawn, checking emails and preparing for meetings that stretched late into the night. I hired a housekeeper, Mrs. Martha, to care for Emily when I was away. She was an older woman, kind-hearted, always carrying the scent of freshly baked cookies and a gentle voice. She looked after Emily meticulously, from preparing breakfast to driving her to school. I was grateful for her, but I also felt a quiet relief because it allowed me to stay in my own world. The world of numbers, contracts, and million-dollar handshakes. Emily, on the other hand, seemed to withdraw further each day. She no longer brought out her sketchbook to show me her drawings or shared her whimsical stories about a singing cat or a dancing star. I noticed the change, but convinced myself it was normal. Kids are resilient, I thought. She'll get through it. I didn't ask questions, didn't sit down to listen, didn't hug her when she needed it. I only asked empty questions like, "How was school today?" or "Have you eaten dinner?" And when Emily responded with short answers, I'd nod and turn back to my phone screen. One afternoon, while I was in the middle of a tense meeting about a Boston project, Emily called. I glanced at the screen, saw her name, but pressed decline. I'll deal with it later, I thought. It's probably nothing big. When I called back late that night, Emily was already asleep. Mrs. Martha relayed that she had just wanted to ask if I could take her to the park that weekend. The park? No way, I told myself. I've got to fly to Chicago this weekend. I sent Emily a quick text. I am really busy, maybe next weekend? She didn't reply, and I didn't think much of it. At her new school, Emily faced challenges I was completely unaware of. The middle school was vast, with long hallways and cliques of students already familiar with one another. Emily, with her shy nature and the fresh wound of losing her mother, became a quiet shadow. She sat alone during lunch, clutching her sketchbook like it was her only friend. Once, a girl in her class invited her to join the school's dance group, but Emily declined, afraid she wasn't good enough, afraid she wouldn't fit in. I learned these things later through a teacher's account, but at the time I paid no attention. One evening, Emily walked into my home office holding an invitation card. "Dad, my school has a performance this Friday," she said, her voice soft but full of hope. "I'm singing a song and I want you to come watch." Her eyes lit up as if my agreement alone could chase away all her sadness. I looked at her, then at my computer screen where an urgent email awaited. "Sure, I'll try," I said, but my voice lacked conviction. Emily smiled, nodded, and left the room. I didn't see the fleeting sadness in her eyes or the way she clutched the invitation tightly. Friday came, and as always, I was swept up in work. An urgent call from a partner, a problem that needed immediate attention, and I forgot my promise to Emily. When I realized, the clock already read 8 o'clock. The performance had started at 6. I rushed to the school, my heart pounding with worry. But when I arrived, the auditorium was empty. Only a few janitors were sweeping the floor. I ran to the school gate, and there, under the dim streetlight, stood Emily alone, her blue performance dress slightly wrinkled, her eyes fixed on her small shoes. "Emily," I called, running to her. She looked up and smiled, but the smile couldn't hide her disappointment. "I'm so sorry, work was crazy. I trailed off, not knowing what to say. Emily just nodded, her voice soft. "It's okay, Dad. I know you're busy." Then she climbed into the car, silent the whole ride home. I wanted to say something, to hug her, but I just gripped the steering wheel, letting the silence choke us both. That night when I checked on her, Emily was asleep, her sketchbook open on the desk. I saw a new drawing. A girl standing on a stage, spotlight shining, but the audience seats empty. Next to it was a small note. "Dad didn't come, but I'll still sing for Mom." My heart tightened, but I did nothing. I closed the sketchbook, turned off the light, and returned to work, as if it were the only way to escape the guilt gnawing at my soul. In the days that followed, Emily grew even quieter. She started complaining about headaches, but I brushed it off as school stress. "Drink more water, sweetheart," I'd say, "or rest a bit and it'll pass." I didn't take her to a doctor, didn't ask more, didn't realize those complaints were more than just childish whims. I was consumed by numbers, contracts, and flights. I thought I was building a better future for Emily, but I didn't see that future slipping through my fingers. Autumn continued to pass, with colder winds and roads blanketed in golden leaves. I drove through them, but I no longer saw their beauty. All I saw was my phone screen, unread emails, and the promises I failed to keep. Emily, in her small world, kept walking alone, carrying the pain of losing her mother and the loneliness I, her only remaining parent, had unwittingly created. Time slipped by like the golden leaves falling outside the window, silent and impossible to hold on to. It had been over 2 months since the accident, and I was still chasing the relentless pace of work, trying to fill the void in my heart with meetings, contracts, and flights. Every time I looked at Emily, I felt a small crack in my soul. She grew quieter, her deep brown eyes often staring into the distance as if searching for something I couldn't give her. I told myself she was just growing up, that the pain of losing her mother would eventually fade. But I was wrong, terribly, devastatingly wrong. One morning in mid-November, the air was colder and the autumn breezes carried the sharp chill of approaching winter. Emily was getting ready for school as usual, but I noticed she moved more slowly, her small hands clutching her head as she tied her shoelaces. "Are you having a headache?" I asked, my voice casual, my eyes still glued to my phone screen. "Just a little," Emily replied, her voice faint. "Drink some water and rest a bit," I said, not looking up. She nodded, said nothing more, and left with Mrs. Martha. I didn't think much of it, didn't ask further, didn't realize those headaches were more than fleeting. That day, I was in the office in the middle of a critical meeting with a group of investors from London. My phone buzzed, the screen showing a call from Emily's school. I glanced at it, assuming it was just a routine notification about schedules or a minor event. I pressed decline, as I had done so many times before, and continued debating the figures on the report. But less than 10 minutes later, the phone buzzed incessantly. This time, it was Emily's homeroom teacher. I frowned, reluctantly answering, my voice tinged with irritation. "Hello, what's the matter?" "Mr. Harrison, Emily fainted in class." The teacher's voice trembled, urgent. "We've called an ambulance and she's being taken to St. Mary's Hospital. You need to come now." My heart stopped. I mumbled something, probably, "I'm on my way," and rushed out of the meeting, leaving behind the stunned gazes of my colleagues. My mind was a whirlwind of chaos. Fainted, Emily? She'd only mentioned headaches a few times. It couldn't be serious, could it? But deep down, a gnawing sense of dread began to take hold. I drove to the hospital like a madman, ignoring traffic lights and the blaring horns around me. Images of Claire flashed in my mind. Her face in that final moment, motionless, pale. I couldn't lose another person, couldn't lose Emily. When I arrived at the hospital, I ran straight to the emergency room, my heart pounding, my breath ragged. A nurse led me to the waiting area where Emily's homeroom teacher stood, her face etched with worry. "Where is she?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Emily's being examined by the doctors," the teacher said, trying to stay calm. "She suddenly complained of a severe headache in class, then collapsed. We don't know what's happening." I nodded, but my mind was blank. I sank into a chair, my hands trembling, trying to recall the times Emily had mentioned her headaches. Why hadn't I paid attention? Why hadn't I taken her to a doctor? Those questions swirled, cutting into me like a blade. The wait in the hospital felt endless. I watched other families, a mother hugging her young son, a father holding his daughter's hand, and I felt like a stranger in my own life. Finally, a doctor emerged, his face grim. "Are you Emily Harrison's father?" he asked. I nodded, standing abruptly, my heart ready to burst. "Please follow me." The doctor led me quickly to his office. In a small room, the doctor showed me the CT scan results. He pointed to a shadowy area on the screen, his voice low but clear. "Emily has a brain hematoma. It's likely a result of trauma from a previous accident. It's been developing silently and should have been detected earlier." I felt the blood drain from my face. The accident. The car crash months ago when Claire died. Emily had been in the back seat and I'd thought she only had minor bruises. I hadn't taken her for a thorough checkup, hadn't noticed the subtle signs. How didn't I know?" I muttered, my voice choking. The doctor looked at me, his eyes a mix of sympathy and sternness. "Has Emily been complaining of frequent headaches?" he asked. I nodded, tears welling up. "Yes, but I thought it was just normal." My voice broke. The doctor sighed, placing a hand on my shoulder. "We'll do everything we can, but Emily's condition is critical. The hematoma is putting significant pressure on her brain. At this point, she may only have a few weeks." The doctor's words hit me like a dagger to the heart. "A few weeks?" I repeated, unable to believe my ears. "No, that's impossible. She's only 12. Please, doctor, there has to be a way." I was nearly shouting, tears streaming down my face. But the doctor only shook his head, his eyes filled with regret. "We'll try to manage her pain and keep her as comfortable as possible. But you need to prepare yourself." I left the doctor's office, my legs barely holding me up. I was led to Emily's room. She lay there, small and fragile on the white hospital bed, an IV line in her arm. Her eyes were closed, but her chest rose and fell faintly. I sat beside her, taking her small hand, feeling its faint warmth. "Emily," I whispered, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything." But she didn't respond. I sat there in the cold hospital room with the steady beeping of machines and the smell of antiseptic, feeling like the worst sinner alive. For the hours that followed, I didn't leave her side. I looked at Emily, trying to memorize every detail of her face, her delicate eyebrows, her long lashes, her pale lips. I thought of all the times she'd tried to reach out to me. The times she'd asked me to take her to the park, the times she'd waited for me at the school gate. Each memory was another knife, cutting deeper into my heart. I had missed so much, and now, facing the reality that her time was slipping away, I didn't know how to make it right. That night, when Emily woke, she looked at me with tired eyes that still held a spark of that familiar light. "Dad," she whispered, "you're here." I gripped her hand tightly, tears falling onto her small knuckles. "I'm here, Emily. I'm not going anywhere." She gave a weak smile, then closed her eyes as if my presence alone was enough to comfort her. But I knew deep in my heart that my presence now was far too late. The days that followed felt like I was half dead. My world, already shattered when Claire passed, now trembled once more. Emily, the only light left in my life, was slipping away, and I was powerless to stop it. I set aside all work, canceled every meeting, and devoted every moment to her. I didn't want to miss another second, though I knew the time we had left was painfully short, like the last golden leaves falling from the branches before winter's arrival. St. Mary's Hospital became my second home. I sat by Emily's bedside for hours, holding her hand, listening to her faint breaths. The sterile room, with its harsh fluorescent lights and the steady beeping of machines, felt cold, but I tried to make it as warm as possible. I brought Emily's favorite books, her old drawings, and the blue blanket Claire had knitted. I wanted her to feel safe, loved, even though I knew nothing could make up for the months I'd missed. Emily grew weaker, but her smile still shone, like sunlight piercing through autumn leaves. Whenever she woke, she looked at me with those deep brown eyes, and I saw a world of emotions in them. No blame, no anger, just a gentleness I didn't deserve. "Dad, tell me about Mom," she said once, her voice frail but full of longing. I recounted memories of Claire, how she laughed when I spilled coffee on my shirt during our first date, how she sang lullabies to Emily when she was little. Emily listened, smiled, and sometimes whispered a detail I'd forgotten, as if she were the keeper of our family's memories in my place. One afternoon, Mrs. Martha visited the hospital. She brought a box of freshly baked cookies, their sweet aroma filling the sterile room. She sat by Emily, stroking her hair, and sang a lullaby Claire used to sing. I stood in the hallway watching through the glass, my heart constricting. Martha wasn't just a housekeeper. She had become family to Emily, someone she turned to when I wasn't there. When she stepped out, I invited her to sit in a corner of the waiting area, wanting to thank her for everything she'd done. But that conversation changed everything. "Mr. James," Martha began, her voice low and heavy with emotion, "I know you love Emily, but do you know how lonely she's been?" I looked up, my heart tightening. She continued, her eyes both sad and stern. "After Mrs. Claire passed, Emily was barely herself. She didn't talk much, but I saw her sitting alone for hours, clutching her sketchbook, writing letters she never sent. Once I saw her write, 'I miss Mom, but I also miss Dad, even though he's right here.' Her words hit me like a knife. I felt suffocated, tears welling up. I didn't know," I mumbled, my voice breaking. Martha shook her head, placing a hand on my shoulder. "Emily didn't want to bother you. She knew you were busy, so she kept everything inside. She told me about the school performance, how she practiced so hard, hoping you'd be there." I bowed my head, gripping the chair, trying to hold back the wave of emotions crashing over me. Martha went on, her voice trembling. "Emily once told me she was afraid she wasn't good enough to make you proud. She was scared you'd forget her, the way you seemed to forget Mrs. Claire. She never said it to you because she didn't want to make you sad. But Mr. James, she's just a child. She needed you more than any contract." I couldn't speak. Tears fell to the floor, each one carrying the regret I'd tried to bury. I remembered the performance I missed, Emily's disappointed yet smiling face as she stood at the school gate. I recalled the time she asked me to take her to the park, the time she quietly left my office when I was glued to my phone. Each memory was a fresh wound, and now, knowing her time was running out, those wounds became an unbearable pain. That night, I brought my laptop to the hospital room and found an email from Emily's teacher with a video of the performance I'd missed. I opened it, and there was Emily on stage in her blue dress, standing under bright lights. She sang a song Claire loved, "Somewhere Over the Rainbow." Her voice was clear and pure, but I noticed her eyes kept scanning the audience, searching for a face I knew wasn't there. When the song ended, Emily bowed, her smile radiant, but her eyes filled with disappointment. I broke down, unable to hold back my sobs. I had missed the moment she needed me most, and now I didn't know how many chances I had left to make it right. In the days that followed, I did everything I could to make Emily feel loved. I read to her, told stories, and even tried drawing with her, though my clumsy sketches made her laugh. Once, she held my hand, her voice weak but firm. "Dad, don't cry. I don't want you to be sad. Keep smiling like Mom always did, okay?" Her words felt like a gift, but to me they were like a chain I couldn't escape. How could I smile when my heart was breaking? The time I spent with Emily became the most precious moments of my life. Each day I brought to the hospital small things she loved, a daisy from the park near our home, a picture book about cats, or a cookie carefully prepared by Mrs. Martha. I learned to sing "Somewhere Over the Rainbow," the song Emily performed at the school event I missed, though my voice trembled and faltered. Emily smiled, her eyes lighting up, and I felt a fleeting spark of light pierce my soul, even if only for a moment. But I knew, though no one said it aloud, that her time was running out. Each morning as dawn filtered through the hospital room's curtains, I looked at Emily and prayed for a miracle. She grew weaker, her breaths as fragile as a thread, but her smile remained resilient, as if to comfort me, to say everything would be okay. I couldn't fathom how a 12-year-old could be so strong while I, her father, was too weak to face the truth. Sitting by Emily's side, watching her innocence and purity, I wanted to break down and cry, to let it all out. But I told myself to hold back, to smile so she wouldn't be troubled as she crossed to the other side. And then, I realized that the greatest punishment isn't returning the pain someone caused you. It's denying them the chance to make amends once they finally see their mistakes. One day when Mrs. Martha came to visit Emily, she pulled me into the hallway and spoke, her voice low but weighty. "Mr. James, she doesn't have much time left. Tell her everything you want to say. Don't let yourself regret anymore." I nodded, tears falling silently, but I didn't know where to begin. How could I offer an apology big enough to make up for the years I'd missed? And I was afraid I'd break down and sob in front of her. Then the day came, a cold autumn day when the sky was gray and the winds blew stronger, carrying away the last golden leaves. I sat by Emily's bed, holding her hand, feeling the faint pulse in her small fingers. She woke at noon, her eyes opening wide, clear and bright as if untouched by illness. "Dad," she whispered, "I dreamed of Mom. She said she's waiting for me in a place full of daisies and sunlight." I smiled through my tears, trying to keep my voice steady. "Your mom's always there, Emily, and she's so proud of you." She squeezed my hand lightly, a weak but meaningful gesture. "Dad, I'm not scared," she said, her voice soft but clear. "I just want you to know, I love you so much." Her words were like a flame, warming and burning my heart at once. I leaned down, kissing her forehead, tears falling onto her pale cheeks. "I love you too, Emily. I love you more than anything in the world. I'm sorry I wasn't there for you sooner." But Emily only smiled, her eyes closing, as if my apology wasn't needed, as if her love was enough to erase all my wrongs. That afternoon, Emily's breathing slowed. Mrs. Martha stood in the corner of the room, quietly wiping tears while I held Emily's hand tightly, unwilling to let go. The beeping of the machines grew sporadic, then stopped. A doctor entered, checked, and shook his head gently. I heard nothing but the sound of my heart shattering. Emily was gone, slipping away as gently as a falling leaf, leaving me in the cold hospital room, her hand still warm in mine. I don't know how long I sat there, only that when I stood, my legs trembled and the world around me seemed drained of color. I looked out the window, watching golden leaves drift in the wind, and thought of Claire, of Emily, of the moments I'd let slip away. The next day I walked to the cemetery, standing before the two gravestones of my wife and daughter, an emptiness consuming me. I had lost them not just to accidents or illness, but to my own carelessness. And now, I had to live with that pain, a pain no words could ever describe. After Emily's passing, my life felt like a room without light. I returned to the Manhattan penthouse, once filled with Claire's laughter and Emily's cheerful voice, but now weighed down by a crushing silence. Every corner of the apartment reminded me of what I'd lost. The sofa where Claire used to sit and read, the dining table where Emily drew her vibrant pictures, and her small room where her sketchbook still lay open on the desk, as if waiting for its owner to return. I didn't dare touch them, afraid that a single touch might make those memories vanish. I lived like a shadow, moving through endless days without truly living. Work, once the center of my world, became meaningless. I stopped opening my laptop, ignored emails, and cared nothing for million-dollar contracts. The numbers, the handshakes, the flights, all of it turned to ash when I realized they had stolen the most precious time I could have had with Claire and Emily. I asked myself what I had been living for, and the answer was only a cold, empty void. Each week I visited Claire and Emily's graves in the suburban cemetery, where rows of maple trees glowed red in the autumn sunset. I brought daisies, Emily's favorite flower, and placed them before their cold headstones. I stood there talking to them, though I knew only the wind answered. Claire, I'm sorry for breaking my promises. Emily, I'm sorry for not being there when you needed me. Those words repeated endlessly, but they could never ease the ache in my heart. I felt like a criminal sentenced to live with unrelenting regret. One afternoon, under a gray sky with biting winds, I stood before their graves, clutching a rope. The thought of ending it all had crept into my mind long before, but that day, it was stronger than ever. I didn't want to live anymore, didn't want to face this emptiness another day. I tied the rope to a nearby tree branch, tears streaming down my face. I thought that if I left, I might see Claire and Emily again, might say the apologies I hadn't said enough. But as I looked up through my tears, I saw two small clouds in the sky, drifting gently, shaped like two figures holding hands. One larger like Claire and one smaller like Emily, with faint but unmistakable smiles. I heard Emily's voice, soft but clear in my memory. Dad, don't cry. Keep smiling like Mom always did, okay? I let go of the rope, collapsing under the tree, sobbing like a child. I didn't know if it was a sign or just my imagination, but that moment pulled me back from the abyss. I chose to keep living, not for myself, but for the promise I made to Emily. I wanted to keep her smile and Claire's alive within me. I began to change, not as James Harrison, the businessman chasing wealth and prestige, but as a father and husband, however late, who wanted to atone for his mistakes. I sold the penthouse, gave up the company, and used the money to establish a scholarship fund in Emily's name, supporting lonely children, those who, like her, had no one to listen to them. I also started traveling, sharing my story. I stood before crowded auditoriums, from small schools to large conferences, talking about Claire, about Emily, and the painful lesson I learned. Don't let work make you forget those you love. I spoke of Emily's smile, how she forgave me despite my unworthiness, how she taught me that love doesn't wait for you to be free. Each time I shared, I cried, but I also felt lighter, as if I were carrying a piece of Emily to the world. Some nights, sitting alone under a starry sky, I felt Claire and Emily were still out there watching over me. I stopped running. I learned to live with the pain, to smile as Emily had asked. My life was no longer about numbers or contracts, but about stories, smiles, and lessons I shared, hoping no one else would endure the regret I carried. Autumn came again, with roads blanketed in golden leaves and gentle breezes. I walked the familiar path, carrying a daisy, and smiled. Not because I'd forgotten, but because I knew Claire and Emily wanted me to live, to carry their love to the world, and I would until the day I could see them again. My story isn't one of success or fame, but a warning, a plea from the heart of a father and husband who lost what was most precious by chasing fleeting things. Don't let work make you forget those you love. I once thought million-dollar contracts, handshakes with partners, and flights across time zones were the most important things. I was wrong. No success is worth more than Emily's smile, than Claire's gentle touch. Work can wait, but moments with loved ones cannot. Miss one, a school performance, a park outing, a simple hug, and you may never get it back. I learned this at the dearest cost, losing those I loved most. Don't wait until it's too late to see your mistakes. I ignored the small signs, Emily's headaches, the disappointment in her eyes when I missed her performance, the letters she wrote but never sent. I thought I had time, that I could make things right later when work slowed down. But time doesn't wait, and neither do your loved ones. By the time I realized my errors, Emily was gone, leaving me with her forgiving smile, but also the sweetest revenge, a life haunted by the inability to say one final apology. Love doesn't wait for you to be free. I thought I could love Claire and Emily on my terms when it was convenient, but love doesn't work that way. It demands presence, listening, moments when you're truly there, not just in body but with your whole heart. Emily taught me this, smiling even when I didn't deserve it, loving me despite my absence in her darkest days. Her love was the greatest gift, but also a painful reminder of what I let slip away. I share this story not for forgiveness, but in hope that you, those listening, won't follow my path. Stop, look into the eyes of those you love, listen to them, cherish every moment. Don't let work calls, unread emails, or personal ambitions blind you to what matters most. Because when you lose them, as I lost Claire and Emily, you'll find no pain greater, no revenge more devastating than living with the regret that you didn't love them enough when you had the chance.